Love in community, that is dripping in black.
Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Our special guest host is Dominic Lawson from the Black is America podcast.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your guest host, Dominic Lawson. I'm a multi-award winning podcaster across multiple genres, including history, mental health, behavioral health, history, sports, and all the things, right? And so I am so glad once again to have the honor to be the guest host of Dripping in Black. Just want to say again, thank you to S Squared, the man behind the glass, for this amazing opportunity. And as always, as you know, I'm a company man, at least I try to be, right? So before I know you see the fit, Dripping in Black, hoodie, sweatshirt. So if you want to get one of these, any kind of merch, any other merch that we have at the Dripping in Black, go to dibkdripshop.com to get this hoodie and other merchandise to represent the Dripping in Black brand. But let me get to the task at hand here. She is a dynamic children's entertainer and educator whose journey spans music, theater, and podcasting. From performing alongside legends and serving as Whitney Houston's personal makeup artist, we got to dive into that a little bit. Toni's path has led her to creating What's Poppin Penny, a podcast inspired by her granddaughter that's already being recognized by the likes of Spotify and others. Through her puppet shows and the children's musical Preschool Family, the musical, Toni brings fun, interactive learning experiences to young audiences. Welcome to Dripping in Black, Toni Kennedy. How's it going, ma'am?
Thank you so much, Dominic. That was so nice of you to say, and it's so nice of you to have me on. I'm doing great.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this for a week now. I know we met in Baltimore. We're a little bit removed from the Afro and Audio podcast festival. And I just loved your energy and meeting you in person, and definitely love them snacks you came through with. Listen, hey, listen, listen, I don't know. Listen, Dripping Black family, I don't know if you ever had the combination of Skittles and popcorn. Take it from me, it's delicious. So just wanted to make sure I said that.
It's what's poppin'.
There to see. Look at that. On brand. On brand. I love it. I love it. But speaking about what's popping, I want to hear about your story. Before the podcasting and everything, who is Toni Kennedy? Where did she grow up? And just tell me all the things.
Okay, so like Steve Martin in The Jerk, I was born a poor black child. Um, I was born youngest of 9 in St. Petersburg, Florida, which it was not the progressive place it is now. You visit St. Petersburg now, it's a wonderful community. It's a diverse community. It's one of the largest queer communities in the country.
Okay.
And when I was growing up, it did not even integrate. The laws didn't hit the books until 1972, and I was in the second grade. So it was a much different place, but it was a good place. I grew up in the oldest project there in St. Petersburg. At the time, it's called Jordan Park, and 3 doors down, you will find Angela Bassett and her mom and sister.
Oh, wow.
So Jordan Park, I say thank you. You obviously have something in the water where where good things happen to those that eventually are able to come out of it.
I love it.
I had a sister that was 16 years older than me, and she married her college sweetheart when I was in the 5th grade, and he was a ball player in Washington. His name was Ed Leggett, and he was a professional athlete. And so they figured they could do better for me than living in St. Pete. So starting in the 5th grade, I moved in with my sister and her husband, and I lived with my sister in Washington, Tacoma, Maryland, in that whole area until 12th grade. 12th grade, I was attending the School Without Walls, and my sister was getting married and wanted to start anew. So she sent me back down to Florida, and I hadn't lived in Florida for all those years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of a traumatic event, but it led to a life that ended up loving. It was from Florida I didn't go to college. My high school advisor said, you should get a GED. I was telling her, I was like, I'm really having a hard time fitting in here. And she was like, that's okay. You can go and get a GED and it's just as good. So it's like, thank you, Caucasian lady, for that great advice.
Right.
And so I did that. And I I I joined a band.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little thing. My uncle, who was a in politics in DC, don't know how he did it. He did it. He's like, "We're gonna get you into American University. You're gonna go to American University. You're gonna become the teacher you've always wanted to be." And I was in Florida, and I was just like, "I'm gonna join a band, and I'm gonna go to Aruba, and I'm gonna live in Aruba." And from Aruba, because they kick you out after 5 months,
Okay.
I went to Oahu. I lived in Hawaii. I was a singer, thanks to a really nice lady, Azure McCall, who's like the Black Dawn Ho of Oahu.
Okay.
And Azure did this really cool thing for this little 20-year-old girl. She gave me her room 2 nights a week and her band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she taught me to, and I'm gonna put quotation marks around it. If you ever hear me sing, you'll know why. She taught me how to sing jazz. But more than
Okay.
anything, she taught me how to perform and to live out loud, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. I lived on Oahu for 5 years. I was one of the first, not the first, Black model for Ala Moana Mall. I got to meet the entire cast and hang out with the entire cast of Magnum PI because it was during
Right.
that time, right?
Right.
Um, so it was a great time, but most importantly, I'm from the South. I'm from Florida, and people say Florida's not South, and I go, well, there's Cuba, but West Florida, Bradenton, St. Petersburg, that's real country. That is very
Right.
country. It's not Miami. So being from the South, being a little girl from the South, being the youngest of 9 from the South, I had my place and I knew it. I was firmly sat in my place,
Okay.
right? Um, and when I moved to Hawaii, I would get questioned a lot. Are you from here? Are you from here? And I've got one of those auras that kind of wherever I am, people think I'm a native there. Um, I lived in Milan for a little while, right? And so people just naturally think I was Italian. When I lived in Aruba, people just thought I was, Aruban from whatever they are called. Um, and
Think you
so
got it.
thank you. So when I moved to Hawaii, people often thought I was Samoan, and they would just take for granted I was from there. And one of the things when you are separated from the mainland and you're separated from systemic racism, um, I was seen for the first time. And so I got to see myself for the first time. A lot of the times I would have an ambition as a kid, and I was either told, and I have to say, out of good, my mom was a fear-based person, and rightly so. She grew up on the same plantation that our family had been enslaved on, centuries before, right? She was a
Mm-hmm.
sharecropper at that time, and she has horrible, horrible stories about growing up in that environment, right? So she's very protective of her children, and she was a fear-based person, and I'm a hope-based person. So we were like oil and water,
Right.
right? And when I would want to do something, my mom would say, Black people don't do that. You can't do that. Black people don't do that. And even the statement when I said I wanted to go to college as a little kid, I would play teacher all the time. And she would say, college is for white people and smart people, and you're not either. And she did not mean that harshly.
Right.
That was her experience and her motherly instinct trying to protect me from something that she saw as impossible, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but I'm a hope-based person. So when I moved to Hawaii, I would get all the time, "You're such a pretty girl." And I would lay in bed, Dominic, and try to figure out what was wrong with that sentence. I mean, it was like a Rubik's cube. It would hit me
Hmm.
and I would just go, "Okay, thank you." But the thought process, and eventually I figured out that they were not saying you are a pretty black girl, which is what I heard my entire life and
Right.
everything that implied. The limitations that implied for me. Now, when I saw that there was a world out there that was willing to see Toni, I got to tap into all the possibilities of Toni. My blackness was not going anywhere. I was,
Right.
I was born black, I'm going to die black. But it was the first time I was able to imagine myself without the systemic racism that had been piled up on me my entire life. And, it's wonderful that people, have homes and environments where that's not the norm. That was my norm. And since then I've met, and because we don't live in a bubble, I've been able to meet parents like I'm sure your parents are like, "Dominic, you can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be." I got the pleasure of meeting those type of parents too. So I was able to like cipher off some of their fuel
Okay.
for myself
Right.
and go and do these things scared, but do them.
For sure. For sure. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I think what I appreciate about what you just shared is the fact of, I don't know if it's the importance of traveling, but the importance of being in different spaces, right? Because it gives you a different vantage point, a different eye view. You know, like I said, I mentioned that we were at the Afros and Audio Podcast Festival recently, right? And I listened and sat in on the African podcast. Podcasters talk about their stories from Africa, this that, and the other. And I just remember sitting there listening to their stories and just like feeling somewhat envious of them, because like it's almost like they are affirmed in their Africanness, they are affirmed in their blackness. And it's like, for however long I live on this earth, being born here in the United States, there will always be a part of me that will be a bit unsettled
Mm,
in that affirmation, right?
mhm,
Because I was born here in the United States as a black person. So I guess I appreciate your story because it made you a world citizen in
mm,
that regard, and to not only to see the world differently from different vantage points, but also to bring the world into you and to have those different type of affirmations, if you will, and to siphon off, from different places in those experiences. So I definitely appreciate that story, and I can see why your resume is the way that it is. It's like, and please don't take this the wrong way. It's like there's a little bit of everything in there, right? And I think it speaks to the diversity of Toni, and I think that's kind of dope. I think
thank
that's kind of
you.
dope. Yeah,
Thank you.
for
It
sure.
took a lifetime for me to be okay with that. Like I just
I
turned
bet.
60 this year.
Yeah,
And it's every generation before this generation, right? It's been find that one thing, stick to it. And if you don't stick to it, then you've got no stick to itness and
yeah,
you're a quitter and you're just aimless and well, I'm glad that cycle has been broken and that people understand they're multifaceted, and also that life comes in seasons. Because when you caught me in my heyday in my 20s, you couldn't find a more fabulous 20-year-old. I'm sorry, Dominic, it was not going to happen.
yes, ma'am.
And then when I was, in my wife and mom phase of it all, I
Yeah,
was a stay at home mom. I was like, my friends used to make fun of me and they'd say I was Donna Reed. because I was just like that mom, and I was killing it and loving it. When I began a career, I was a preschool teacher because of the hours with my children. But then when they went to high school, when my son was in the 11th grade, I started a nursing program. And so he was in finishing up in school, and I was just starting school. We were study buddies.
Right.
Um, and again, I think it's because I'm a hope based person. Even the worst times of my life, my marriage ended abruptly and badly, and
Okay.
I ended up homeless for a while,
Okay.
but I had to still be mom. So God and I just did that thing. And my kids' first Christmas after my divorce, I purchased all their toys at a pawn shop because that's what I could afford. Um, And I felt so bad about that for years, like shame, just shame. And one day they were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry about that, right? And they were like, why, that was the best Christmas ever.
Right.
It's like, okay, okay, God, thank you. You did that thing. I don't know why I'm always doubting. Yeah, you did it. So to say all of that, um, I love that I've had all of these different experiences, and I've had
Yeah,
to grow into loving me for having them.
for sure. And I I love how, you know, it's almost like all those experiences allow you to overcome, that adversity, right? And be able to, I don't want to say bet on yourself, but like just at the very least go down the rabbit hole of see what could be, right? Maybe it's nursing, maybe it's singing, maybe it's styling, maybe it's makeup artist, maybe it's award-winning podcast, and it's all these things, right? It's like I love that energy, right?
Thank you.
And I think, you know, I think a lot of times in our community we're not afforded those kind of experiences in order to
Right.
explore those things, right? And I think that's a beautiful part of your story. I want to ask you this. I want to shift gears just a little bit here because, like you said, one of those many careers you had was as a makeup artist for a very iconic singer that you were, that we kind of mentioned at the top of the show. If you would, uh, what are some things that you learned from a Whitney Houston that, not necessarily like, the singing or anything like that, but just how to be a professional in whatever you are, and things of that nature? Kind of walk me through that. And if you got any stories, I won't be upset, you know, I mean, nothing malicious or anything like that, but just like any positive stories that, you want to share about Whitney or whatever. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, actually, the greatest lesson I learned while working for Whitney, and I'll circle back to her,
sure.
was actually from Missy Elliott.
Okay.
We were backstage in Newark, and Missy was backstage, right? And an older person said something real sideways. Like there's no two ways about it. This was real sideways to Missy.
Okay.
And she said, yes, ma'am. I know, ma'am. She was so humble. I still can cry from thinking of it.
Hmm.
She was so, this is Missy Elliott, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is Missy Elliott, but either her mom, herself, her God, whoever designed this beautiful, beautiful person gave her the humility of anyone I've ever seen. I mean, it was it was jaw drop because I thought, rightfully so, I thought Missy was going to be like, popping off or whatever, because it was real sideways what this person said. But the person was older, right?
Hmm.
And Missy recognized that this is an older person and this is how we speak to older people. But her ability to humble herself, separate herself from the greatness of Missy Elliott, and humble herself to be righteous when talking to this adult that was older than she was, even
Mm.
though they were wrong in what they said.
Right.
That left such an impression on me. And I try to share that story with every young person that I meet, because young people now, they're born with smartphones in their hands. And it's easy to give way to hubris when you literally have all the answers in the palm of your hand.
That's fair.
You can be real arrogant real fast and just stay that way for the rest of your life.
Hmm.
But that's hubris. Know when to be humble. Now that is humanity. That's the spirit God created you in. That's the service spirit. Don't serve your ego, right? She could have
Right.
served her ego and been all right about it too, but she didn't. And for some reason, that just like impacted my soul.
No, I feel that. I feel that because, like, if anybody, had the bona fides to be missing that Elliot, it would be her, right?
Right.
So no, I definitely feel that, and I think that speaks to something that we all need to be reminded of every once in a while, right? Because a lot of times we feel like we can be on top of the world and just forget that, like, this is all gonna be taken away from us in a heartbeat. Right. So no, I get that. And thank you for sharing that lesson for sure.
Thank you.
I'm curious about, because you mentioned this earlier, speak to your passion about um teaching and, early childhood education, right? Kind of
Right.
speak to that a little bit. Yeah.
Um, I know I grew up in a household that I was loved, but it was not a gentle household.
Okay.
Okay. One of the most traumatic things that I remember is that m- an adult around me said, curiosity killed the cat. And I came back. I don't know where I knew it, but what? I know this. I got it. Satisfaction brought him back. Yay, Tony, look how smart you are. But that was met with a slap across my face that brought stars to my eyes and
Yeah.
lifted my little body up off the floor,
Yeah.
because it was deemed as me talking back.
Right.
Um, the adults around me, um, I have come to term the type of parenting that I experienced, and that many people, not just me, will like get it right away. I grew up in plantation parenting. My mom
Okay.
grew up on a plantation, right? Harsh, 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 harsh. I grew up the youngest of 9 siblings who had already, as we put it, we survived that raising, right? And so I really loved TV and I really
Okay.
loved books. Even though the people didn't look like me, I could excuse that just to get away from where I was, right? One of my favorite shows was The Waltons.
Okay.
Now, when you look at, um, like they say, Seinfeld is a show about nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seinfeld is a show about the nothingness of white culture. They are in on the joke and they laugh, like the episode where Elaine doesn't know whether her boyfriend's black or not, and she doesn't want to directly ask, so she's trying to hint at it, trying to get him to like every episode of Seinfeld is so hysterical because the audience is in on the joke,
Right.
right? It
Mm-hmm.
is a show about white culture. The show we got for Black culture and the show we often get for Black culture is not the in on the joke of it all. Jordan Peele gave us that in Get Out,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Afro surrealism experience, we can all laugh to those little inside jokes because we get them. Little white girls in the elevator opens up, two Black guys are out there, and the one goes, we gotta help her, and then goes, man, that's a trap, don't go. And we all crack up because we get it.
Right.
um the shows that I got in my time frame were Good Times. I don't really want to watch it because there's really no hope at the end of it. Even Thelma's football husband gets hurt and he has to move into the project. Like, it's just Lucy and the football, that whole show. All
Right.
hope is being snatched away. So I really loved The Waltons. It was a show about nothing. It was a show about family experiences. It was a show that showed us how important multi-generational families are, the people in the family, what they have to offer. Those grandparents weren't just sitting in a corner being invisible. They were a core. Those kids could always find an adult in that house to help them through an emotional problem or a physical problem or any kind of problem they had, no matter how small or big, right? They could turn around and find an adult to help them. And so that's why I created What's Poppin' Penny,
Right.
because it really is a show about, first of all, most kids shows only have other kids in it, like a marauding group of kids always together, right?
Right.
And even in Charlie Brown, the adults said womp 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 womp, like they didn't even
Mm-hmm.
give them. But the reality is, children are around adults more than they are around other children. So that's the reality I wanted to reflect back to us, not only as a community, but even outside of our community.
No, I love that. And when you were talking about the Waltons, it made me think about your show, What's Poppin' Penny, which is, Dripping in Black Family. You can listen to all major podcast platforms. And it's a phenomenal show,
Thank
by the way. It's a phenomenal show. I had the pleasure of listening to the family reunion episodes, and I
you.
love the creativity in the, what did you call it? Alatena Axis. And it's like, I know where that is. I know where that is. Nice little hybrid Southern place that she created, and I love the creativity in that. So, if you would, Toni, just tell us more about What's Poppin' Penny and why you created it and what it's all about.
Fortunately, I was chosen by Verdell Walker, um, producer, creator extraordinaire of all things children, um, to become a part of the Sound Up Spotify Sound Up program for kids. There were thousands that entered. 10 of us were chosen. I was the oldest of everyone to be chosen. um Spotify, the win was Spotify would produce our shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then mid program, the program was shut down.
Oh.
So there was no winner. And I'm the only one who went on to produce my podcast, because you know what they say, if you give a man some fish, he'll eat for a day, but if you teach a man how to podcast.
I love it. I love it.
So everything that I was able to just soak up in that program, from Rebecca Cunningham, and like the list is too massive for my little head. I'll explode. Um, but I was able to continue and create my own podcast, not knowing at the time what I didn't know. In
Right.
hindsight, the experts have told me my podcast really shouldn't exist.
Hmm.
It was extremely um, untypically expensive to create. It had a very large cast. Um, and those two things alone would not have gotten my project greenlit by anybody. So that's the blessing of not knowing.
Gotcha. No, for
Yeah.
sure. No, and yet here we are. Well, we're on season 2 now, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal show, and I noticed you have the bear there in the background, and the phenomenal storytelling, right? Especially the part I believe it was the part 3. And I won't give up too many details because we want people to go listen to the episode for sure. And just to give people an idea, the website is what'spoppinpenny.com. Make sure you check the show notes and after you listen to this episode to go check out that website and the episodes, not just in the family reunion, but the other ones as well. But I really love, when you got to the part about the quilt, and it's like it really had
Mm.
this just really dynamic, like, storytelling piece to it. And I felt immersed in it, really.
Oh.
And when you think back to our conversation just now, what I was telling you about how the African podcasters were telling their story, it put me in that same space of just feeling not envious, but also just feeling like welcomed and like, like almost like I was hearing my own personal history in that piece. So thank you for that. What I am curious about when it comes to creating a story from scratch or creating a world from scratch is exactly that, right? Because for me, I'm a nonfiction narrative podcast. I know what the world is; it's already predetermined. But talk about, Toni, the process of creating a world out of nowhere and what that looks like. Well, it's probably not out of nowhere, but like creating a world that makes sense for Penny and everybody else, the cast of characters and What's Poppin' Penny. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. Where it all starts for me is, how do I make the world make sense to kids?
Okay.
Going back to what we were talking about before about my personal history, I was in the library. I was 8 years old, and a book literally fell off the shelf and hit me. And it
Okay.
was called, and I still have this book today, and it's called A Child's World, and it's a textbook. And because I didn't have people around me to receive my questions and to, um, I always say that their children are pack animals, right? Maybe that's not how it should be said today, but I'm 60, so give me some grace. I say children are pack animals. The first pack they belong to is family.
Mm,
You have to make a child in your family feel valued and seen and essential. And if you are always shooing them away and putting them on the outskirts of what's central to the family, then that next pack is school. So they'll go to school, teachers are their pack. Teachers have great influence over children.
hmm
That's why a lot of great things can happen in school, at the with adults, but also that's why a lot of bad things can happen at school with adults and children. Because if you don't get them in that first pack, they will definitely go to someone who does make them feel central, right?
Right.
The third pack children belong to are their friends. If you haven't centered them in the first pack, by the time they get to that third pack, you gonna have some real problems, because yep, they're gonna jump off the bridge just because they friends doing it too.
Right.
So for me, reading that book and having the world, I could open up a chapter and it would be
hmm
explained to me why certain things are happening, and it's all developmental. Humans are just developmental. That's all. It's just a process. But I didn't have anybody teach me that outside of this book. So my passion for families, for children, is to be that book to every person that I meet, to show them that, yeah, it's okay, it's cool, we got this,
hmm
because it's just developmental. My passion comes from a place of wanting children to always feel worthy, always feel they're only in the process of growing up. This is not where we end up. My favorite adults are adults who are just the kid who has learned discernment. Um, my role as a mom to my now adult children is for my daughter. I'm a mother's helper. My role as grandma is mother's helper, right? That was my
Mm-hmm.
role for my parents in preschool. I'm here to help you. Your hands are full. For kids, I'm here to reassure you all the stuff your life is messy. All the stuff you're feeling is normal. Rejection does hurt. That's not in your imagination. Like all the things you feel,
Yeah.
sometimes people can gaslight you and make you like, oh, get over it. Or, it hurts. That's not your imagination. This is hard. That's not your imagination,
Right.
but you're not doing it alone. And yeah, so that's where my passion comes from.
Okay. Let me ask you this because you were talking about just now, like, sometimes life gets messy and stuff like that. And when I listen to your show, it puts me back in the mindset and mind frame of watching PBS as a kid. Mr. Rogers, uh, you know, um, Ghost Rider, right? That's my generations and stuff like that. Obviously, reading Rainbow, Sesame Street, things of that nature. And one of the things that they did sometimes, where going back to the messy life part, is that like sometimes you have to share with kids tough subjects, right?
Mm,
Right. And I'm curious for Toni, because I did mention, I mean, you did mention in there like the journey from Africa to the United States, right?
mm.
And as a Black person in this country, I don't need to fill in the blank about what that journey was. Talk about Toni's doctrine of like talking about the tough conversations in your work. Does that make sense? Does that
Yeah,
question make sense? Okay. Yeah.
and that's through every single episode that you'll ever hear.
100%.
And for me, it's always meet them where they are.
Okay.
We talked about grief the very first episode. We meet Penny and her family is grieving, but the adults are doing it one way that is really strange to her because they're talking about her granddad and they are laughing. And this is making her low key angry. And there's nobody there that she feels is TA, the teddy bear. TA stands for trusted adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so her grandpa was her trusted adult. And so she makes a wish, she comes back, and he explains how when people talk about people, it makes them feel happy for a little while because they're talking about the good stuff. And yet, but they are grieving just like you. Yes, they are sad. And so now Penny is back connected to her family. She thinks like they're having two separate experiences, but TA is able to bring her back centralized into the family, right? Next episode, she and her grandma talking about this cake that her grandma made and how her grandma just brings to her, this is a treasure. And she's like, a treasure like rubies and diamonds? And she's like, better. This cake was in our family before we were able to write it. And she explains to Penny that people who look like you and me, we weren't allowed to learn to read or write. We weren't allowed to own things like houses or furniture. And Penny's response is, that's not fair, because I'm going to tell you the secret of children. Children do not care about right or wrong.
Right.
Is it right to eat cake in the morning for breakfast? I don't know. I don't care. Is it fair that Jamal gets to eat cake for breakfast and I don't? Oh, that's the hill I'm going to die on.
Right.
That's children. They care about fair. So when her grandmother presents this information to her, right, her response is, that's not fair. Now, at that point, parents can go back in and fill in the blanks for their particular child on their particular level, wherever their child is. But I've started the conversation, right?
Right.
And that's what I do in the Magical Family Reunion episode as they're just driving along. And Spicy says, and Penny's like, are we lost? And Spicy's like, no, you see that river right there? That's where the Clotilda sank. And like, there are some parents that's going to go, phew. And there are other parents that are going to go, did she just say Clotilda? Did she just
Mm-hmm.
introduce my baby to a significant part of not only American history,
Right.
but our culture's history?
Right.
Now, I have a jumping point to start this conversation. So, yeah, I forgot the question. I'm sorry,
Oh
Dominic.
no, you're totally fine. Like you're right on par. Basically, the question was just like, you know, what's the doctrine for you to introducing tough subject matters? Basically,
It's
right?
where they
Yeah,
are. It
yeah,
is meet them where they are. I had a parent whose daughter would get upset when she started saying, "You're black," and she's like, "Oh God, I'm afraid she's not proud of our heritage. What did I do?" Like that's what parents always do, right? What did I do?
right.
And I said, "No, developmentally, where she is, and she's drenched in it because she's mastered it. I
Hmm.
am Sammy. You are mommy. That is a cat. This is a desk."
Right,
Right? And so when you say, "You are black," she goes, "No, I'm not," because you're really rattling her with her base knowledge, right?
right.
The way to introduce it into her world is to don't use words like "you are" statements versus we our our heritage is African. Like introduce the concept of a heritage, a culture, something that she can add and not
Hmm.
something that she in her mind would subtract Sammy from being. We're going to add to Sammy. We're just going to keep adding. Um, and so that
We're gonna
helped.
make Sammy a much fuller person.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But when you at that age, and you can say that to an 8-year-old and they get it. Like, yeah, yeah, I am girl, I am boy, I am black, I am, you
Right.
know. But at the age 3, it's like, you coming in here with some nonsense. I'm Sammy. I know this.
Right. For sure. You know, answer this question for, or more so, because I think when people hear children's podcasts, a lot of times grown-ups are like, all right, cool. I just put this podcast on, shut the door, I can be out, right? Make the case why adults should listen with their kids to What's Poppin' Penny.
3 reasons. It's about a little girl with brown skin and curly hair. And when I make that statement, I don't care if the person is 6 or 96.
Okay.
They squeal, "I'm a little girl with brown skin and curly hair." So they get to feel cherished in that show.
100%.
That's one. Why listen to it as an adult? I get a lot of email from men. And I had to say, "Oh my God, hello, people. Black men nurture, black men nurture."
100%.
But I get emails from black men going, "Man, I love this show. It reminds me of the time I spent with my dad, or it reminds me of the time I spent with my kids, or it reminds me of the time that I spent with my grandkids." Men are being seen and they love it. I wasn't ready for that part of it. It was like, because to me it was like duh, but it the lack how they what's the diversity matters, representation matters.
100%.
I'm seeing that the representation of the black man in the family, nurturing, loving, hands on. I mean, he does his little girl's hair. That is really resonating. Another thing that's resonating is the diversity within the Black culture. Jabari, our dad, he is from Jamaica. So a lot of the feedback that I'm getting back from people in the Caribbean community is like, thank you, because most families are diverse within our own race of
Right.
people. And so that is nice to be able to hear this dad speaking patois to his little girl. Um, and then finally, What's Poppin' Penny is actually a parenting show disguised as a kids show.
Look at that.
That's
Look
why
at
you should
that.
watch.
I love it. I love it. You know, and like I said, the show is phenomenally done. Like I said, when I listened to the family reunion episode, I love how the older auntie is talking and telling the story, and then it just transitioned to the younger version of her telling the story of the quilt and stuff like that. I was like, and that's probably just me being a podcast nerd. I was like, oh, that is masterfully done.
You know
That
what
is
makes that so magical?
what's
The
that?
older aunt is played by Betty Reed Soskin.
Mm-hmm.
She was awarded a medal by uh, President Barack Obama. Betty is famously 103 now. She was
Mm-hmm.
the oldest forest ranger. She became a forest ranger in her 80s.
Oh yeah.
She was like,
Okay.
I'm just in here. I'm going to get a job. So she became a forest ranger. And the younger version of Betty is Betty's granddaughter.
I knew you was gonna say that. I
Is
knew
her.
you was gonna. That's
Uh,
beautiful. Again, that's me being a podcast nerd and appreciating just those little nuances and those background stories of just how powerful uh that part of the piece is for sure.
Now,
Thank you. Yeah.
cousin Gwen is played by Renee Henry, who is the grandniece of Cicely Tyson.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, you got some hitters in this show. You got some hitters in this show. Kudos to you, Tony. And no, seriously though, kudos to you for first of all making a phenomenal show, but also in the sense of how when the Spotify program kind of bellied up, if you will, you're like, no, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep doing this. And I imagine it's because you knew the impact you could have and the importance of it, right? Because I definitely you know understand and feel the reparenting piece of it. In behavioral health, they always talk about giving yourself something that you didn't have as a kid, the reparenting of it. And I definitely see what's Poppin Penny as doing that for those dads and for whoever who listens, the 96-year-old, the 60-year-old, the 50-year-old, the soon to be 42-year-old, right? Like I definitely feel that. So let me just, you know, say thank you for
Mm,
that because I think you're giving something to people that they probably didn't even know they needed.
thank you so much.
Of course. Besides the fact that it's just masterfully done.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. And again, Driven to Black Family, what's poppingpenny.com. It shows you, all the episodes, meet the cast, the episodes, some of the press that it's seen and things of that nature. Please go subscribe to what's Poppin' Penny, and listen to it with your family. It's a phenomenal show. It's an
Thank
absolutely
you.
phenomenal show. You gotta check it out. So I want to ask you this as we kind of start to wrap up here, and just say thank you so much for coming on the Dripping in Black. We really appreciate your time. What's next for you? What's Poppin' Penny? Just kind of share what's going on next and what you're doing to kind of scale the show and all those things.
I had kind of a Freudian slip just a second ago when I said watch it because it's my absolute dream to have it animated and
Hey, you
starting
speaking it?
with.
Listen. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. Again, when I listened to it, I heard PBS Kids, so I'm just gonna speak that to existence. So
I
I
love
feel
that.
I feel where you're coming from. So no, but you go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. I would love PBS Kids. Yes. So excuse me for interrupting you.
And I got one more question for you, but before I do that, again, just want to make sure people understand, just the magnificence that is Toni Kennedy. Please check out What's Poppin' Penny. You will not regret it. Go to what'spoppinpenny.com, and check everything out. But also while we're at it, go to MissTonySings.com and you learn more about a lot of the work Toni does from the puppeteering and the children work and the preschools and stuff like that. Like I said, Miss Tony Sings .com. So S Squared is getting something queued up for you that we want to give you before we get you out of here. But the last thing I want to ask you is this, which is, as you create what's Popping Penny and everything else, when it comes to children's animation, children's programming, this, that, and the other, what do you hope the legacy of Toni Kennedy will be? Because you have quite the resume, right? Quite the resume. But when it's all said and done, what do you feel like the legacy of Toni Kennedy will be?
um, I really hope that my legacy is people trust me with their children externally and the child inside of them. I really hope my legacy is I feel a more positive way about myself because I was exposed to something Miss Tony did, created, or said.
I love that. I love that. Ed Square sent me a note is asking if you can send us out singing a little bit.
You don't want that. Nobody
Give us
wants
a little bit.
that.
Okay.
There's a reason I sing to children. They are not discerning. Remember, I said
You said
ad-
that. You said that.
adults with discernment because children are not discerning. They're just like, you go, Miss Tony. And I'm like, I'm going, kids.
Miss Tony did her thing, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I love it. I love it. No,
But it
it's
will
all
definitely
good.
be off key.
It's all good. Well, we like I said, we absolutely love what you're doing, and I think S Squared is probably queuing up a nice gift for what you're doing. Listen, we love everything you're doing here at Dripping in Black, and we want to make sure that we highlight you in the best light possible. And so, one of the things we do for all of our Dripping in Black alums, because that you are an alum now, is with a magazine cover. And so obviously we wanted to highlight that and help with your branding and this and the other. So there you are. And in a few weeks, you will receive this in the mail to kind of, memorialize and memorize, your journey here on the Dripping in Black podcast. So how does that look to you?
That is incredible. That's incredible. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And really quickly, is there anything else you want to plug or put out there, social media handles and anything like that? The floor is yours to do that.
You'll find me on LinkedIn at Toni, Toni, Kennedy, like the Boulevard. And you will find me across all social media platforms at Hey, What's Poppin' Penny? Because I am from the South. So it's Hey,
There it
What's
is. Let them
Poppin'
know, Tony.
Penny?
Let them know. No, I appreciate that. And we appreciate you, Dripping in Black and Dripping in Black family. Thank you so much for listening to this phenomenal show as we learned about Toni Kennedy and her amazing show, What's Poppin' Kennedy. And as always, remember, if you want some of this merch, go to the DIBKDripShop.com to get that merch for you. Thank you, S Square, once again for letting me be the guest host. And more importantly, thank you, Dripping in Black family, for allowing me to serve you in this role. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. And thank you for subscribing. And until next time, be kind, be excellent on purpose. It's a choice. And as always, keep it black. Peace.
On the next Dripping in Black podcast, our special guest host, Dominic Lawson, interviews professional life changer and educator, Dr. Jason McGee.
Let's focus on what it means to be excellent in these high-profile positions. If leadership is, the top of in our government, what does a good leader look like? What do they inspire? Do they inspire hope and change and optimism? And that there's a way to do this. There's a way to transcend your situation and your circumstance.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.